Okay, so here we have a swatch right here. This is what's called an antiqued leather. As you can see, the base color or the lighter color is our dark green A color. And then what they do in manufacture is they put a darker finish over top of it that gives it a mottled effect. I don't know if I think the camera's picking that up for you. There's a little bit of a mottled effect, and it's basically a darker color. You could use a dark green B color, or you could use what's called an antiquing, which is a black, or it comes in brown, or it comes in a maroon color. There's many different colors of antiquing. But, you know, you could just use a black, no problem, to sort of recreate this sort of look. So what we have is we have, of course, our leather sealer, but this is a special leather sealer called an antiquing black. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to duplicate, of course, this finish and this color using our dark green A. We're going to get this piece of leather right here, and you know, it's basically the same, as you can see here, as that swatch the customer sent in. We're going to dye this, of course, dark green A, which you can do. Of course, our dyes can also perform color changes. And then once we dye this dark green A right here, we're going to apply, of course, our antiquing to try to duplicate that color and that finish. So first thing we want to do, again, you would clean the area that you're applying the dye to. You want to make sure that the dye is going to adhere and stick properly. This right here is a small 2-ounce bottle of our leather dye. And of course, this is a dark green A color. And you're going to apply it to the swatch. You can either do that, or you can apply it to the sponge. Okay, but you're going to want to put about 2 or 3 coats of dye over top of this, because that's what you need to do when you're talking about color changes. So we're just going to put the dye on like this, dabbing it on, just like that, and we're going to dry that. Okay, so that's dry. What we're going to do is we're going to put another coat on. And let me just put, you can even put it on like this. And if you're doing a color change, a lot of times what we do is just put the dye onto the leather and just sort of wipe it on, just like this. Because what you're doing is you're getting a really good thick coat of dye onto the swatch. And just make sure that it's not running or really dripping, or if you have too much dye on there. I mean, let's say you did have too much dye in there. We don't, but if you did, you can just sort of take it off with the sponge, okay? But it's very easy to work with. Even if it looks like it's puddling a little bit, it's no big deal. All you need to do is let that dry, and it's going to look perfect. Because what's going to happen is if there's a little bit of dye puddling, it'll sort of blend and settle out, and it'll dry perfectly. So what we're going to do is we're going to dry this up. We'll be back. Okay, so we're back. We've let this area dry. You're probably asking, well, how are we drying it? We're drying it in here with a heat gun. We recommend you use a hair dryer, or you can always let it dry overnight. Okay, most people that are doing color changes to their furniture, they're not going to be rushing through that. The repairs that don't work out very well are always rushed. So we always recommend you do have a good amount of time. Again, you could just apply the dye on here and let it sit for 4 to 6 to 8 hours. Of course, it all depends on the humidity and everything in your home, but we always recommend overnight. Now I'm looking at this. It looks to me like it's got about 90% coverage. We're just going to go with one more coat. I think that should do it. This time, let's just apply it to the sponge. This way you have full and complete control of the dye. And you just basically just want to dab it on and dab it on to get full and uniform coverage. Okay, so we're just dabbing it on like this. Going to dry this up, and I think we're going to be okay for the base coat. Okay, so we're back. That again was 3 coats of dye. It looks pretty good. That's a good representation of our dark green A color. Of course, we're doing a color change because we didn't happen to have any dark green A leather just hanging around, so we actually had to create it. So that's why we're filming this, just to let you know that you can do color changes. But regardless, customer, what they're going to do is they're going to apply dark green A to their chair, of course, that looks like this. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to clean this up. You're going to apply the dark green A so you have the proper base color, and then you're going to take the black antiquing. Make sure you shake the bottle. Okay, shake it well, open it up. And what you want to do now is you want to try to create the antiquing. So you're going to look at this and scrutinize the antiquing, and you're going to want to try to duplicate that. So if we were to just spray this out of the bottle, you're looking at something like that, which actually isn't bad. But we may need to apply it to the sponge. So if you spray it onto the sponge, just like that, okay, you can create something like this. It's a little bit more controlled, right? You can create something like this. So if you look at the swatch, it's hard to say. Okay, it looks like if we did this, it would probably be better. But you're going to win either way. You just want it to, nothing's going to be perfect here because the swatch isn't perfect. It has an inconsistent antiquing on it. That's what makes it look like leather, okay? So you can go either or, but what I would recommend is first get a piece of paper and test it and see how much antiquing you want to put on. Let's say we put on a whole bunch of antiquing here and we went like this. So you're going to see what that's going to do too. So it's going to lay it on a little bit heavier, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to just spray on the antiquing. That's plenty antiquing. And we're just going to have this here, and we're just going to sort of, whoops, get the sponge so you can hold on to it. And just sort of dab it on. And then, see that? We're just gonna we're gonna dry that up. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, so we're back. What we're gonna do is just fold this over a little bit. And we're gonna put it up to this swatch. And as you can see, it looks like we need a little more. Okay. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a little bit more antiquing on there. And we're going to go a little more. And you may have to look at from the side so you can sort of see what you're doing. And sometimes if you want to take some off, you can actually fold the sponge over onto the clean side and then just sort of dab it. But you don't want to dab it this way and wipe that way. You just want to dab it right at 90 degrees like that. That's the best way to do it. So we're going to dry this up. We'll be back in a second. Okay, so we're back. I mean, that's looking a lot better. It's looking a lot better. What we can try now is we can actually spray some. So let's spray a little bit on there. Spray a little bit on there. See how we sprayed it? Now we'll dry this and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so we are back. We dried this up. Let's take a look at it with the swatch. Not bad. I mean, again, it's not going to be perfect because you have to try to duplicate that. You're not looking for perfection. You're looking for something that works and something that looks good and something where when you're finished, your eye isn't going to go there. You're going to want to blend it into the chair. So if you were just to do a certain area of the chair and you were to just apply the dye and antique it, let's say right here, you would want to do this, and then you would want to spray the antiquing in and around the rest of the chair so it all sort of like blends in, okay? And of course, if something were to happen, you'd be like, oh, damn, I went a little bit too dark. How do I lighten this up again? The way you would lighten it up again is you would reapply the dyes over top of this. All of our products are backwards compatible, so that means that once you've done this, you don't need to strip it down or anything like that. You would just reapply the dyes, and then let that dry, and then reapply the antiquing. And also the antiquing is a sealer, so it is a top coat. It's a black antiquing sealer top coat. So you don't need to apply any sort of protection over this. This is fully and completely protected, okay? So that would be that. Again, it looks pretty good. Again, if once you get the patterning down and the way to duplicate that antiquing to your liking, that's pretty much going to dictate the type of job you do. This was a very quick and fast job. I mean, if we were to scrutinize, or we would take our time, you could put a little bit of antiquing on, and then antique it a little bit, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And of course, that would be a refinement. That would do a nicer job for you. But sometimes just spraying it on does a nice job as well. Okay. It's decent. Also too, if you had, a leather like this is an antique leather. If you were to just spray the antiquing on it and let that dry, back in a minute. Okay, so that's what it's going to do. It's going to fully and completely antique that leather. And as you can see right there, that's a beautiful antiquing. Just absolutely gorgeous. Okay. All right. And also here too, if we remove this swatch, whoops, just had a little bit of tape under there. And again, if we put it to this, that's pretty close. I mean, that's pretty darn close. And also too, we want to try to make it as easy as possible for consumers. We don't want to try to put out a product where it's going to be difficult to do or anything like that. So there's a lot of technology in here with regards to water-based, no fumes, not flammable, easy to work with, and provides a superior product, as you can see. Okay, very simple to do, very easy to do. If you run into problems, like I said, all you need to do is wipe the dyes on again, get your base color, and then reapply the antiquing. Hope this helped. We'll see you next time.